Good morning and welcome back to your Partner in Success Radio. I'm your host, Denise Griffitts. And today we are exploring something that every single one of us deals with on a daily basis, and that's conflict. Whether it happens in business, on a team, or even in our closest relationships, conflict is unavoidable. So if conflict could actually become a pathway to better collaboration, clearer thinking, and stronger relationships, would you like to know more? You're going to. My returning guest today is Mitch Weisburgh, and we're going to talk about mind shifting, conflict, and collaboration, including why disagreements escalate, what's happening in our brains when they do, and how we can shift our thinking so conflict becomes constructive instead of destructive. And before we begin, let's take a moment to thank today's sponsor. Today we are sponsored by Roberta Fernandez, your mind stylist. Your thinking shapes everything, and that's what Mitch and I are talking about as well too. Your choices, your confidence, your relationships, and how you lead. When your thinking evolves, your life evolves with it. Using hypnosis and customized training frameworks, Roberta helps you recognize the patterns that no longer serve you. They help you release what's holding you back and redesign your mindset so you can move forward with clarity, confidence, and emotional intelligence. You can learn more about Roberta at yourmindstylist.com. Mitch, good morning. It's so good to have you back.
Well, thank you. And I was listening to your intro about Roberta Fernandez. That sounds fascinating. I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah, you should. And, I like to when and you're a sponsor on our show as well, and I thank you for that. But it makes sense to me to offer a sponsor who is also talking about the same thing you're talking about so people can go, ooh, like you just did. Ooh, I need to learn
Right.
more.
Yeah.
So that wasn't by accident. I did that on purpose.
Well, that's why you're who you are because, you plan things out really well.
Oh, thank you. Listen, you and I have worked together quite a bit, and I love your work. So before we get started, tell people who you are. If they're not familiar with you yet, I want them to become familiar with you. So tell them who you are and how you operate in the world.
So, well, my name is Mitch Weisburgh. As you said, I ran a business teaching people how to use computers for about 20 years. And then in around 1999, when kind of figured out that people coming up already knew how to use computers, I was looking for new areas to get into. And it just seemed to me that technology was going to revolutionize education. So I migrated to working with technology in education, hoping that technology would be like a catapult to give every kid a chance to live a great life. And we would transform education and change the way we taught, change the way kids went to school. And so I worked with schools and education publishers for quite a long time. And lo and behold, in around 2016, 2017, I look back and say, I've been in ed tech now for 17 years, and kids still aren't prepared for life. They graduate from high school and actually a third of kids don't even graduate from high school.
And
And
so
that
many of them can't read.
and even the ones who graduate, they can't read. They're not ready for
Right.
college level work. They're not ready for real work, jobs. They're not ready to run families. They're not ready to be citizens. And so you look at it and say, well, just we're failing kids. What is it that kids should learn? And at the time, I was offered a chance to talk to some undergraduates, and I decided that the topic that I would talk to them about was how do you really prepare to be successful? And in going back and forth with the college, it was like, well, something, it could be a half hour. No, it should be longer than that. What about a semester? No, I'm not going to do a semester. What about 2 days? So we decided we would do I would do a 2 day workshop. There'd be 60, 70 kids in the workshop. And then there were so many kids who wanted to take it that I ended up doing two of them. And I had 5 or 6 months to prepare the work. And so I gave that class, and at the end of the 2 days, the kids stood up and cheered. And it was like, something, these things are really learnable. we're not teaching them to kids, but this is what people need to be successful as adults. And it kind of broke down into three different elements. One element is understanding how our brains work, how our brains can be our best friend, but how our brains aren't always our best friend, and how to turn it around if it's getting in our way. And second, how do we approach situations given the fact that there's almost nothing we do where if it's a significant problem or opportunity, the first thing that we do is going to completely solve the problem. And then we become upset and we go into blame mode. But how do we prepare so that when the information starts coming back that the first thing that we do didn't work out, that we're prepared to take that information and use it to adjust and get better? And so I call that resilience. And the first one I call resourcefulness. And then the third part is that no matter what we do, we're going to be doing it with other people. And sometimes those people are going to collaborate with us, which is great. But most of the time, they're going to disagree with us, or they're not going to do the things that we think that they should be doing, or they're going to get in our way, or we're just not going to like them. And yet, our natural ways of dealing with others when they get in our way is through anger or running away, avoidance. And those don't work in the long term. So, what are the things that have surfaced over the last 50 or 60 years that can teach us how to work with other people where we're going to have a long term relationship with them no matter what? We can't walk over them, but somehow or other we have to move forward. And so that is the third strand, which is conflict and collaboration. So those are the three strands. I've subsequently separated them out so each is its own course. And in fact, two of them are their own books. The resourceful book, I wrote first. While I was writing that book, I was teaching the three courses. But it just seems in these times, everybody is getting so upset about the divisiveness and the fact that we can't seem to get anything done and we're frustrated with others. And so when I was teaching the conflict and collaboration courses, that's where people were like, now I know why when I say these things, people get their backs up. Or now I know why when somebody says this to me, I get angry and I don't have to get angry and we can still move forward. And so it just seemed to me that that was the book that I needed to write second. So that MindShifting, Conflict and Collaboration is the second book, and that came out in December of 2026. And that's
Got
who
it.
I am.
Yeah, and I love that. And I'm just looking at your Mind Shifting, Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success. I've got that book. While you were talking, I wrote, I take notes when I'm listening to my guests because I'm always going to have a question at some point. And I wrote down, do you ever listen to yourself speaking? Because I think we need to do more of that. Go back and say, what did I just say? How did that make me feel? How do you think you made that other person feel? Shut up and listen.
That pause is so critical. And
Right.
and what's interesting is that a lot of the people who end up buying the book or taking the course on conflict and collaboration, they're thinking, wow, this is going to teach me how to convince these people that they're wrong,
No,
right? Um,
not
but
hardly.
but in fact, we have to start working on ourselves first, because if our whole mindset is that the other person is wrong and we have to convince them, then their mindset is this person isn't trying to work with me. This person is trying to attack me or beat me. So I have to either run away or attack them back. And you've lost the opportunity for moving forward then. So as you say, listen to what we say. That is such that self-awareness or that metacognition or that pause is so critical. It's interesting that you caught that so quickly.
My grandmother taught me that when I was very young. She was a farmer's wife, and people thought she was a little bit simple because she was quiet. And when she did speak, though, it landed. I mean, she was the first person that said, Denise, you are what you think. This was before mindfulness became a thing, a long time ago.
Mhm.
You are what you think. You are what you eat. You are what you drink. And I took that to heart. She also asked me more than once, Denise, do you ever hear yourself speak? because I tend to just kind of say what I'm thinking and heck with it. I had to learn not to do that.
And I see that so often in conversations where people are saying things, and I'm like, "Do you know what you just said?" And it's
Yeah.
like,
Did you
"No, no,
hear
no.
yourself?
I just told this person what to do, right? And did you do that in a way where if somebody said that to you, well, I'm right. Why should it matter how I said it? I'm just right." It's like, well, stop a second and just think about it. Yeah, it's so important.
I bet you're divorced too.
Right.
I mean, think about that. But it is interesting that now, and I'm seeing more and more and more of this, especially with people like you and Roberta, that people are, and I love that you said pause, take that pause, because I've had to teach myself that too. But you can't just open your mouth and let stuff out. You have to take a breath, stop and think, what are they really saying to me? How can I approach this in a way that doesn't get me run over with a car? I mean, you have to be careful. You have to think.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying that because our brains naturally don't think,
I know.
right?
It's
So
that's right.
so our brains naturally are looking for danger, right? And so if we're in danger, generally we have to figure out, we have to react quickly and really focus on whatever the danger is and to either attack it or run away from it or hide from it or something, right? Um, and when our brains act that way, then our ability to think gets channeled by, stress hormones. So it's very limited to only focus on what our emotional parts of the brain have already decided what to do. And that I think is what ends up getting us into so many conflicts and so much aggression because it just escalates and escalates. And then you get with the different people, you get their mirror neurons that, okay, this person just said this to me. Now I'm gonna say something even more to them. Oh, this person just said this to me. Now I'm gonna attack them even more, and the issues escalate. And yet, when we take the pause and we think, hmm, this argument is escalating. I wonder how I can bring it down so we can have a reasonable conversation. Everything that whole perspective changes. It's like, oh, well, maybe I should be asking them open questions to find out what they really want. Maybe I should be establishing some rapport with this other person before I try to change them. Wouldn't that be novel, right?
It would. And I do pause. I think very quickly, and sometimes it's not a good thing, to be honest with you. But I do pause, and I've actually had people say, "Denise, are you still there? Are you okay?" And I'll have to say, I'm thinking. I want to think about how I want to respond to you." And they appreciate that. They're like, "Oh, okay, well, I'll wait."
Right. Well, not in New York. In New York, we don't wait for anybody.
In the deep South, we do, and
Right.
after a while, I'm going, "Can you just go now? I'm good. Just
Right.
go."
I think also one of the things in the pause is to when you say think about what you just said, one way of thinking about it is to think about, well, what style am I using as I'm talking to this person?
Oh, let's talk about that a lot. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so I could be using a style where I'm telling the person what to do. And I would, maybe call that the competitive style. So if I'm telling you what to do, I don't really care what's going through your mind. I don't really care what your needs are. I'm not looking for feedback. I'm telling you what to do. And what I'm expecting, what I'm hoping is that you then accommodate that and do what I want to. So my style is, let's say, competitive. I'm expecting you to use a different style called accommodating. Okay. Or I may be using accommodating because I may be a hyper pleaser to people. So those are kind of two paired opposite styles. Another style that we often use in conflict is avoid, where we say, something, I'm just going to make the situation worse by talking, or I'm just going to shut up and let this other person, talk, and then I'll go ahead and do it my way. And so that's the third style. And then there's two other styles, and in English, we regard those two words as synonyms. There's collaborate and compromise. And I actually got into an argument with somebody about this. It's like those are synonyms. It's like, no, they're not really synonyms, because in conflict theory, compromise is coming up with a way to split the difference. So you want to do these three things. I want to do these three things. What if we did one of mine and one of yours? That would be compromise. Whereas collaborate is, how do we meet all our needs? Well, you want to do these three things. I want to do these three things. Is there something that we could come up with that meets all six of the things that we want to get done? And so those end up being the four different styles. Compete, where I tell you what to do. Accommodate, where I figure out what you want and I do that. Avoid, where I'm trying to hide from you or hide what I'm doing from you. Compromise, where we're splitting the difference. And collaborate, where we're trying to work together. And as people, we think, something, collaborate is the highest form, right? Because, wow, if we can collaborate, look at how much we can accomplish. But actually, it's very important to understand the nature of the conflict or the disagreement, and to understand what the other person's style is. And then it's not like one is necessarily better than the other, but in that situation, avoid may be the best thing that you can do. Accommodate may be the best thing that you can do. It isn't always that collaborate or even compromise are the right styles to take to resolve a conflict.
And I love that you're talking about the one style which you call compete.
Compete. Hmm.
Compete. And I wrote down, this is how my brain works. It's not my fault. I wrote down malicious compliance, because a lot of people, and I include myself in that, you start bossing me around and you tell me that something has to be done this way. I'll do it, but I'll do it at the bare minimum.
Exactly. That's very often what happens with compete.
Mhm.
Although I will say that the compete style does not have to be something that causes malicious, because just think about an example where, let's say, that something has to be done. Like, you're working with somebody and there's a deadline and something has to be done by the deadline, and the person is saying, "Look, I can't get around to it. Um, you know, it, I can't work this weekend or something." But it has to be done. And so saying, like, I don't care what you have to do, you're going to work this weekend, that causes that malicious compliance.
Oh,
But
yeah.
right, but if you come back and say, something, I can understand because your weekends are really valuable, and and I would not be happy if I had to work this weekend either. The fact of the matter is, this is a really important client for our company, and we have to get this done. And you're the person who has to do it. So I really hate being the one to give you this news, but it is something that has to be done. Um, and you're the one who has to do it. And I'm really sorry that I'm the person who has to tell that to you.
So what you
Um,
did there was give them sufficient information that they now understand why they're being tasked with this.
so I'm going to push back a little bit on the sufficient information, because it wasn't the information, it
It was the
was the
way.
compassion and empathy.
Okay, I gotcha, okay.
Okay. Yes, it was information, but when you're showing the compassion and empathy, then the person is much more willing to open up
Well,
and
that does
consider.
make sense. I mean, if I have sufficient information, though, and I didn't even consider how it was being delivered, so you're right. If somebody says to me, "Denise, this is why it's important, and we think you're the best person," and blah, 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 they are tapping into empathy, and I would
And,
respond to that.
and when the person says, and I can understand why you would be upset, because I would be upset too,
Right,
because I'm
right.
honoring your emotions. Like a parent, okay? So a parent, it's your child has to go to bed now, okay? And it's like, it's 8 o'clock, it's your bedtime, go to bed right now. Versus, and the kid is in the middle of doing something. They're playing on their phone, or they're whatever it is, that they don't want to go to bed right now, and they're going to get upset. But over time, when the parent comes and says, "Look, I got mad at my parents too. It's my job as your parent to keep you safe, and we've determined that 8 o'clock p.m. is the way to keep you safe and make sure you get enough time to sleep. I would be just as upset as you. And I just want you to know that no matter what you say, no matter how angry you get, I will always love you. But it is your bedtime, and now is the time that you have to go to bed. And the kid is not going to calm down immediately, but over time, they're going to have a lot more respect for the way you lay the rules down than if you're always, I'm the parent, I tell you what to do, you're the kid, you do it this way, now get upstairs.
Right. Do it you're told nobody gets hurt. Going back to malicious compliance, when my father, he really wasn't there much, but when he was, we all just scattered. And he would say, "You have to go to bed now." It wasn't even dark yet, but he just didn't wanna be around us.
Wow.
I felt sorry for him. I really do. I still do. He was not cut out to be a parent, but he'd say, "Oh, you have to go to bed now." So I just took my babysitting money and I bought a flashlight and I read under the covers.
That's funny because basically that's what I would do.
Yeah,
I would go into my room and I would read
yeah.
or put the music on really low. Or when I was old enough to have headphones, I'd put headphones on and listen to music. Yep, yep,
Malicious compliance. Sure.
yep.
See ya. And then
Okay.
off you go. But, we're always going but I like what you said about they're just not ready. They're in the middle of something or it was just posed in a way that they're instantly going to, their hackles are going to raise, and they're just not gonna do it.
And then look at avoid, for example. There's a lot of times where we think, this person is just difficult. I want to avoid. And so you're using avoid as a fear-based strategy. That generally doesn't come out well. But avoid could be a really good strategy because you could be judging or discerning that another person is really upset, you're a little bit upset, or you're very upset, and now is not the time. And you can use avoid like, something, we both need to sleep on this overnight so we can talk about it much better. Why don't we talk tomorrow? Or why don't we talk in a half an hour? Using avoid as a way of postponing something. Or you could use an avoid in the sense that, I know this person um, is, I'm trying to get this person to live a responsible life. And I think that I should talk to them, and I start talking to them. And then they start giving me one excuse after another excuse, in which case I could decide, something, I'm just going to avoid being with this person. I'm not going to be able to convince them. If they want to make a change to their life, that's their responsibility. I'm going to put my time and my effort into the things that I can affect. So I'm just going to avoid this topic, or I'm just going to avoid this person and do the things that I enjoy, or do the things with people where I can affect them.
See, that makes sense to me. As an introvert, that has always made sense to me, but I learned a long time ago that, if a problem presents itself, whether it's, a human walking upright or it's something that happened in the yard, I don't know what it is or politics, but my initial go-to is, "Well, can I impact this if I get involved?" And if it's nothing I can do a darn thing about, I walk off.
And you then can put your focus into the things that you can affect.
Exactly, that's exactly right, and I do.
And part of the way of thinking that is, you're building your islands of coherence. You're building the areas where you can focus your effort, and you can be happy, and you can have a big effect. Um, and you're not focusing your conscious efforts in the areas where you're just going to get frustrated. That's such a wonderful way of thinking about it.
It just makes sense to me. I'm mostly logical. Not all day, and not every day, but I wanted to ask you, Mitch, what are a few simple practices that people can use to keep conversations calm and productive, especially when, as you just mentioned, emotions are running high? And these days, oh my God, stay off of social media if you can.
Right. So you brought up that pause, thinking about what you're saying and the impact of what you're saying. I would say that's a big one. Another is if you walk into a situation and you understand that you're not going to have a long term or a big impact on getting the other person to do something differently, unless both of you are in a resourceful state of mind, and you both have a connection, kind of trust or empathy. if those two conditions aren't met, then you can't move forward with a disagreement or a conflict. And so one thing to smooth out those conversations is to postpone the meat of the conversation until you have had time to connect and calm each other down. And you can do that by trying to find, well, one way of doing that is finding things that the other person is interested in, just talking about those things first and establishing a connection. Another thing that you can do is find things that you can compliment the person about, like, like what you're showing here is a tremendous amount of independence, and that is such a strong characteristic that you have. And I'm wondering how we can use that independence that you have and in order to accomplish this as well. So preceding something with a compliment, um, and the compliment has to be said from a feeling of empathy, and it has to be received as a feeling that this person really means it, that this person isn't just saying this so that they can drop the other shoe. So those are two things. One is to understand that you can only move forward in the long term from uh, a connection and a resourcefulness state of mind. Second is to begin with some type of a compliment that probably the other person doesn't expect, and so that kind of that also calms them down. Um, and then I use a way of questioning from empathy uh, called motivational interviewing, which is a way of questioning where the other person ends up convincing themselves to do something rather than
That part I lost you. I wanted to ask you, are there some common communication habits that unintentionally make conflict worse, either at work or at home? Because I'll catch myself doing it. I go, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to say that. And that's when I go back to, did you hear what you just said, Denise?
right. So I think that most of the issues happen subconsciously. I think there's very few people who deliberately try to provoke others, but we
See,
fall
you're a
into,
much nicer person than I am. I think a lot of them do.
well, they might. Um I'm saying that and I'm thinking, well, then why did my wife do this? Right? Um
She doesn't listen to this, right?
she probably will, and she will laugh.
Okay, good.
S- So so yeah, I think that we fall into habits, and again, it's similar to those five different styles. You said that you have a common style that you very often use. Maybe it's collaborate, or maybe it's avoid, or maybe it's accommodate. We tend to have this one style, and people get used to it, and people react to it, and to be able to take a step back and say, hmm, what might be an alternative style in this conversation? Or if we can step back and say, are we connected? Are all parties connected right now, or are we warring? And what can I say to get us connected before getting into the meat of the issue? I think those are two things that we could all do, that will tend to lessen conflicts. Or I would say the goal isn't necessarily to lessen the conflict. The goal is to turn the conflict to allow us to move forward to do things that we probably couldn't have done on our own. Because there's a lot of conflict where I may have one way of doing something and you may have a different way of doing something. And if we get into this, no, I said this, and then you say, no, I said this, we're going to get into a destructive conflict. But if we go into the conflict and it's like, I think we should do this, and you say, I think we should do that, and then we go in and we start understanding our reasoning, it's like, oh, you know something? Well, why don't we do this other thing? Because that meets both of our needs, and that's better than what either of us would have come up with on their own. And a lot of conflicts, when you start using the techniques to connect with people, and think through how you're going to be phrasing things. A lot of conflicts do end up with outcomes that are better than either party could have reached on their own.
And that makes sense. You know what used to really get me before I got smarter and met people like you, but I would have we all have mind chatter, right? And sometimes it's very negative. In fact, I've often said, if anybody in a Walmart parking lot spoke to me the way I speak to me, I would need bail money. We can do some really ugly chatting in our own heads. And I used to have a pretty nasty habit, I think, of trying to set something before it was going to happen. Either I didn't like this person or we had had bad interactions in the past, and I would write these whole scripts in my head and just worry myself half to death, then get on the phone and everything was fine.
Hmm.
None of it happened. So I had to, cut that out of my repertoire. It's just
Right.
stop doing that.
Yeah. And I think you're raising two brilliant thoughts here. One thought is about the chatter that we have, and for 99% of people, 99% of the time, we don't think of it as chatter. We think of it as truth. Like,
No.
oh, this person is difficult, or oh, this student isn't very, this student doesn't do their work, or geez, my spouse always does this whenever the situation occurs, and we just take that as truth. But those that chatter, if we understood that it's just a story that our brains are coming up with to quickly make sense of a situation and keep us safe, but not it has nothing to do with whether it's true or not. It's something that our brain thinks that we're going to find useful. Well, it's like, well, okay, I hear this. What's another story? And we, ask ourselves, this person is always difficult. Okay, I understand. That's a story. What's another way of thinking about it? And our own brains are going to come up with those other ways of thinking about it. Oh, this person is having a really hard time right now. Maybe there's some things that I can do to make their life easier, and then they won't be saying these things that are so difficult. Or this person is saying these things, but I don't have to take them as insults. I can just let them roll off me like, water off of a duck's back. It's like they're entitled to say whatever they want to, but I don't have to react in a certain way. So we can deflect the different things that people are saying. And, the other thing is that we're going to react based on what our expectations are. And so when our expectations are that a certain person is difficult to be around, we're gonna immediately react that way. And when we start questioning it, we open ourselves up to reacting or responding in very different ways.
When you're talking about, I'm going to react to this person this way because this is how I view them, it's a bias. We all know that. But I will catch myself going, oh, they always do this, or, something just negative. And I will stop myself and internally say, Denise, is this true? Is this really true? And that's my pause. It's one of my pauses.
And that's incredibly powerful, and it's empowering to you, and it probably makes so many interactions that you have with other people both, more fun and more productive, right?
I would certainly hope so. I've had a lot of growing up to do. I think we all do. I just remembered what I was asking you when my microphone bugged out. You were talking about empathy and motivational interviews. Tell me about that.
So, motivational interviewing is a style of asking questions that was first, I guess, created by social workers to get people to stop doing harmful actions to themselves, like, drugs or cutting themselves or whatever. And they found that type of questioning uh, is 5 times more effective than any other way of getting people to change their behavior. And so that happened. That was first being used, I think, in the late '80s or '90s, and it's been expanded to basically any time that you're having a disagreement with a person. It's like switching to motivational interviewing mode. It's showing an interest in the other person, asking them from a place of curiosity, not from a place of I want to entrapment, um, what they think is happening, what they want to happen, whether what they're doing has gotten them the results that they wanted, and what else they could do that might be more likely to get them to the things that they want. And then out of those different things that they've come up with, which one or ones are they most comfortable trying now? And then once they pick the one or ones that they might be comfortable trying now, ask questions about, well, how do you feel about doing that? And getting them to talk about why they're okay with changing their behavior. And so it's all a matter of questioning rather than telling another person what to do. And those types of questions, until you've done it a few times, it's hard to do them on the fly. But if you know you're going to have a conversation with somebody, you can actually use AI to map out some motivational interviewing questions that you can use with another person. And so you pre-arm yourself to be able to go into that conversation from a sense of curiosity and questioning rather than the arguments that we tend to have with other people when we're trying to change them.
That makes sense. And you and I have talked before about curiosity. It's one of my favorite words. I'm curious about just about everything.
And so many times with these conflicts, people are going in certain that they know what the right thing to do is. And once you're certain that you know the right thing to do, then the other person is going to react to that and say, this person doesn't really care about me. They're just concerned about what they're just fully vested in what they want to do. So I don't really care about them. And so that curiosity is such a powerful force in resolving conflicts.
And when we talk about curiosity, we're not talking about, tell me everything about you. How's your mom and them? We're
Right.
not asking. We do that in the South. How's your mom and them? I don't know.
Mm.
She's fine. But it's curiosity is in my thinking, what you're saying is a way of getting them to stop and think, when you ask a curious question and it's not probing and it's not going to become part of the gossip mill, you're really you're being empathetic. You really want to know.
Exactly. You're exploratory. You're showing the other person that you're interested in them, and uh, and you brought up the curiosity in terms of how's your mom. If the topic that you're talking about is not the person's mom, talking about the person's mom may be a way to calm the person down. So you can, they'd be called like non-complimentary questions. They have nothing to do with what you're going to be talking about, but they serve as a way of establishing rapport. So you could be asking, "How's your mom?" or "How'd you do in your last art class?" or "What was the best book that you read?" or "What do you think about the winner of the Academy Award?" or whatever the topics are. And if that's coming from a place of curiosity, it's it's a low stakes way of having a conversation with another person, establishing the connection so that then you can talk about the main issue afterwards once the rapport and empathetic connection have already been made.
And I'm thinking that it's a very calm way to go about, how are you? And as we say in the South, how's your mom and them? They want to
Right.
know about the whole family.
Yeah.
but it's a good way to calm somebody, jangled nerves down, I think.
And distracting somebody from an issue,
Right.
whether walking them through, we could do it ourselves with mindfulness or meditation, or running, or listening to music, but talking about some different topic is a way that we can help somebody else get into the mind frame where they're ready to brainstorm and think creatively, because while they're hyped up, they don't have the ability to take in new information, to analyze it, or to think creatively.
Understood. And you say that conflict is inevitable, and it is. I
Yep.
have conflicts with my own self. I've heard
Mhm.
you. You try to tell me what to do, I'm telling you, I fight with my nerve system. She is not the boss of me. So I go left all the time or right, or I get lost constantly. But collaboration is a choice. And I think my question next is going to be, can you collaborate with yourself?
So my sound is still on, but
Yeah,
that's a really interesting question.
you paused.
So I paused.
Yeah.
And my gut reaction is yes, you can collaborate with yourself. Collaborating with yourself, you would tend to do it starting with self empathy. So, we have a tendency when we do things to have this what psychiatrists called our part X always attacking us. Like, you idiot, why did you screw this up? Of course you can't do this. You're completely incompetent. You'll never get friends because you're so unlikable. We say these things to ourselves all the time. And the first step is to think, those are just stories, and it's our brains coming up with something that it thinks we're going to be able to use. But what else could I change that story to? It's like, well, yes, I messed up on this and I learned and I can move on. So, so substituting that blame for looking for the gifts is one of the ways that we can learn to collaborate with ourselves. And so we're not always blaming ourselves and angry at ourselves for doing things.
I agree with you. And listen, one of the ways I collaborate with myself is I turn over things that really bugged me or I don't have an answer for. I may have been fighting with code all day. You and I have talked about that. But
Really, has that ever happened?
no. And never with you, no. But I will turn over literally, and I don't sleep all night. I just don't. I sleep in fits and starts, and I've been this way all my life. Not an insomniac, I just don't need much sleep. But when I know that I'm just about to actually go to sleep, and it may be 2 in the morning, I will turn over whatever question I've got or whatever I want to dig out of my subconscious.
Hmm.
And I turn it over for review, and Mitch, I'm telling you, if I went to sleep at 2, at 3:18, I'm waking up and I'm grabbing my notepad and a pen because I've got the answer.
And when we're so focused on the problem, on the things that are going wrong, that's when adrenaline and cortisol is flooding our brains. And when they're in our brains, we don't have the ability to come up with those things. But by sleeping or distracting our brains or helping when we're with another person, helping them distract their brain to think about something else, we're allowing the cortisol and adrenaline to flush out of our brains so that our prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that's actually does critical thinking and a lot of the innovation that we do, that those parts of the brains can activate.
And I had another question, and I think I just forgot it. My brain just went, "Nah, done." I need a break. What separates people who turn conflict into collaboration from those who stay stuck in disagreement other than divorce?
Mm. I'm going to go right back to one of the things you said at the very beginning. That pause, the metacognition, the ability to think like, well, what am I saying right now, and what do I want to accomplish? And when you start thinking that way, and we try in the conflict and collaboration book to give you a lot of tools so that you can think that way, then you're turning these situations um, into problem solving, where here's the problem, let's solve the problem, instead of I think you should do this and you're wrong. No, I think I should do this and you're wrong. So instead of me versus you, it's you and me against the problem. And the people who have the ability to think through, like, well, what do I really want to accomplish, and is what I'm saying doing that, and how can I phrase that better? Those are the people um who end up with happier relationships that actually accomplish things.
And I wrote down keyboard warriors while you were talking because it is so darn easy, and I'm guilty, we all are, of just letting your fingers hit that keyboard. I have to buy 2 a year, by the way. I kill mine. I
Mhm.
I pound on the poor things. But I've had to learn take that pause and do not respond in a disagreeable or an idiotic way to somebody, either in an email or online. Just pause, take a breath, think about it. Don't just slam into
Yep.
that keyboard and go, "Bah, bah, 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 bah,
Mm.
bah." You're going to make enemies.
And there's times where you will go back and you will do it anyhow. And part
And
of it
I've done
is,
that too.
yep, right. And part of it is to learn how not to beat yourself up about it, is to say, well, you know something? I'm a human being. I did this. These are the results. Here's how I'm going to use those results in the future. And it's over. It's done. I'm gonna move on.
Sometimes you do want to slam doors, but
Right.
you wanna make sure that that's really what you want. So, Mitch, was there a moment in your own life when you realized that the way you were handling conflict just wasn't working for you, and that led you to develop the mind shifting approach?
I think it was more gradual, but one of the things that was a revelation to me was that just about, I don't know, a month or two before the book came out, we had dinner with well, a young woman at this point, but she was a high school kid when she lived with us for a year. She was from China. She was an exchange student. She lived with us for a year, and now 13 years later, we had her over for the afternoon and dinner. And at the end of the evening, she says, "Wow, you and mom aren't fighting anymore. What happened?" And it was like, right, we're not fighting anymore because we've learned how to think about what we say before we say it. And it was just like, well, I hadn't realized that there was such a big difference because it kind of it creeps up on you.
I remember you telling me that story, and you were pretty stunned by it.
I really was. But and the three of us just laughed when it happened. It was a couple months ago.
So, what really has changed? I mean, most things that are going to stick with us, I think, are gradual. But sometimes you just go, "Look, I've had enough. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm stopping, you're stopping, go away." Sometimes that's the way to do it. But when you started writing these books, what were you thinking?
Well, I was sorry. Um, I was thinking, wouldn't the world be a better place if people really understood how to be resourceful, how to move forward with situations even when things don't work, and how to work together with people? And what can I do to make that happen? Rather than thinking like this world is a horrible place. Look at all the fighting that's going on. I'm just going to retreat. And so it's really the thinking about how there are so many people who have been successful and been good people, and how do we expand that so that there's a critical mass of people who are helping us move forward and actually solving problems. And that's what really drove me to first teach those college kids, and then continue teaching the courses, and then write the books.
Understood. So let me ask you this. When people begin to see conflict differently, what changes first, in your opinion? The way they communicate with others or the way they talk to themselves? For me, it's the way I talk to myself.
So what I think what I well I think that the way you see it is 100% right. So, but I would say that when people think about resolving conflicts at the very beginning, they're thinking about, give me the techniques to calm other people down. And then when they start getting into it, then they start to understand, well, wait a minute. If I want to calm people down and I want to move forward, I have to learn how to control myself better. And
Right, right. And if
yeah,
somebody says, Denise, you need to calm down, you know it. You know that old meme, you never tell a woman to calm down.
you
You
can't even
just
tell a man to calm down. What do you mean a woman? Right?
women are worse, trust me. We'll look at you and then we'll pick up our coffee cup and we'll be looking at your temple.
Uh,
So, just so you know.
uh, so yes, I would say, I would agree with you 100%. The first thing is to understand how you react and how to change your reactions to responses. And then once you change your reactions to responses, it's then how do you help other people? And keep in mind that you can't change other people. If they're going to change, they have to change themselves. You can make it easier for them to change, but in the end analysis, it's their life, and they're either going to change or they're not going to change.
We have to do it internally.
Right.
I mean, there's just no question. First of all, it's one thing to say, oh, you have to do it internally, but you have to recognize why you need to do things differently. And I'm not saying change dramatically. I'm just saying stop having ugly chit chats with yourself. Stop
Right.
jumping out of your skin every time somebody says something to you. Just calm down and learn some tactics and learn some empathy. I wanted to ask you this, and I've asked other people before. Can empathy be taught?
Empathy, I believe, is on a spectrum. Okay.
Oh,
So I think that there are some people who probably cannot learn empathy, but I suspect that 98% of people, and I'm just throwing the number out, um, really can be taught empathy. I think that when we look at people on the autistic spectrum, there are synapses in their brain that function differently, and it's likely that people who are highly autistic in certain ways, it just that they can they can't learn the deep empathy. Maybe they can learn some phrases that don't tick people off, but I think that for most people, you can learn to say things to yourself that that um give you empathy for another person. Not that this person is difficult, but I wonder what hard times this person is going through. All of a sudden, that
right.
just changes your whole perspective.
Right, and we see this on the internet all the time. Be kind. You don't know what's going on right now.
Yep.
You don't know what's
Yep.
happening in their lives. And I'm paraphrasing, but that's a good way to look at life. You just don't know.
And it's more enjoyable. Not only is it more effective, it's more enjoyable because you're not pissed off all the time, right?
Right, right. Okay, I wanted to go back to leadership and real world application. Ooh, we are running out of time.
Oops.
For we always have such a good time chatting. For leaders managing teams, what's the biggest mistake they make when conflict shows up in the workplace?
I think when they try to shut it down,
Oh,
um, and again, it's not like there's one right answer because sometimes you do have to shut it down. Like if there's conflict and people are in danger, you have to shut it down so that you're in a safe spot. But when you uh, but when you see that there's conflict, in generally as a leader, you've risen in the ranks because your instincts are right, um, more often than not. And so you see the conflict, you immediately know what the right answer is, and you shut down the conflict because you know the right answer is. And I would say when as a leader, whenever you are absolutely sure of something, that's a sign that it's just a survival reaction, and you have to get into the mode where you're curious again,
mhm.
and in doubt and a little bit ill at ease, because you have to be willing to look for more information and come up with better answers than the one you immediately came up with.
We have to do a lot of pausing, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Hey, before we wrap up, if our listeners take just one idea from your work on conflict and collaboration and the mind shifting framework, which I'm very familiar with, what is the one small shift they can start practicing today that would immediately change the way they handle conflict?
To to think about, in this situation, what do I really want? And that's a pause, but it's a way of phrasing the pause so that what you end up doing and or saying aligns with what you really want to happen. So that pause of saying to yourself, what do I really want to happen here, is probably one of the most powerful things that I'd like people to take away from this.
I'm writing that down. Mitch, before I let you go, where can our audience connect with you and where can they find your work?
So probably the easiest place to find me is mindshiftingwithmitch.com. And there you'll find Well, you can sign up for the newsletter, which talks about mind shifting concepts and how they apply to the real world, and that's free. There's information about the books. There's information about the courses. There's links to various podcasts that I've been on. So I say mindshiftingwithmitch.com is the easiest way. I'm also very active on LinkedIn and on Substack, so they could find me there.
And you wanted to offer our audience a link to, I think it's a video. I can't remember now, but I know what it is because I help you build it. Tell us about that.
Okay.
I just sound so intelligent this morning. It's Monday.
Okay. So we built in the fall. Sorry, we built in the fall a course based on the resourcefulness element. Um, Mastering your resourceful brain, and I now I don't remember the exact URL, but it'll be in the show notes.
It's in the
But
show notes. Yeah.
but you can try out that course, and it walks you through a a little bit of the concepts on how to build a resourceful brain. There's an interactive activity where you can test yourself, and then there's an interaction with an AI mentor, which is basically the equivalent to me asking you questions to get in touch with your resourcefulness.
Gotcha. And let me correct myself. I didn't help you build that. I just worked on the web work. So I didn't have anything to do with how you presented it. I just got it out there.
Well, you built the web work, so
I
yeah,
did.
that was great. That
I
was
did.
great. Thank
And
you.
I said bad words a lot.
Well, because I'm really difficult to work with.
No,
So
you're not. But that website, I'm telling
mm,
you, I had a, and I'll tell you this because it was so funny. I finally went to ChatGPT and I said, I'm having trouble with this code. It will not work. And ChatGPT just hallucinated all over the place. And I finally said, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'm going to bed.
mm,
This is God's honest truth. It said, I don't blame you. I'll see you tomorrow.
oh, wow,
Okay, fine.
that is
We
pretty funny.
And I thought, great, it knows me too well. I've
Mm,
got to get out of this relationship. I really do. But listen, Mitch, thank you so much. And I want to tell the audience, be sure to listen to Mitch whenever you have an opportunity. He's got great books. You can go to Amazon and find them very, very easily. And like you said, that link is, or the framework that he was talking about is in the show notes. So go find that. And I want you to know that today we explored a very powerful idea. Conflict doesn't have to divide us. Novel idea, isn't it? In fact, when approached with intention, it can become a pathway to deeper understanding and stronger collaboration. We use that word a lot, collaboration, and some other words that I think you should write down and pay attention. And Mitch showed how his mind shifting framework, grounded in resourcefulness, resilience, and collaboration, helps us pause. We talked about that a lot too, before reacting and engage the more thoughtful part of our brain. So by blending psychology, neuroscience, and real world experience, Mitch shows us that while conflict is unavoidable, the way we respond to it is always a choice. And I think that's important. And when we choose to shift our thinking, we open the door to better conversations, stronger relationships, and more creative solutions. Mitch, thank you for joining us today and sharing those insights with our audience. I always appreciate chatting with you.
well, Denise, thank you so much for the questions and the recap, and look forward to listening to some more of your podcast as well.
Well, thank you. And thank you again for being our sponsor. I think you're a very important part of how we show up in the world. And to our listeners, thank you for spending part of your day with us here today on your Partner in Success Radio. And until next time, take care and keep moving forward. Mitch, again, thank you so much.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.